and talk some Buccaneers with our good pal Scott Reynolds from Pewter. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Here at Amalie Arena, talking all things Tampa Bay sports. How was the combine?
Combine was good. I think the Buccaneers are interviewing some really good players, targeting the right guys. Todd Bowles wants some ball hawks. Music to my ears. I did
you
a
love that,
Pulse
right?
video. I do love that.
And listen, you've been, and you know, we've had these conversations before. Like, you know, we still think Bowles. You know, there's room for him to get better, room for him to grow. But it just, you know, when you posted that, I was like, oh, okay. And it was just, that's one of the most clickable things that I've seen in the last couple of weeks. So, you know, just to let everybody know that hasn't checked it out yet. Again, everything up on pewterreport.com. What do you like about what you've heard from Todd Bowles and Jason Light up there?
I think two things when it comes to Todd Bowles. The first was, and I'm about substance rather than style. The substance we'll get into in a minute, but the style really kind of piqued my interest and intrigued me, because the thing with Todd Bowles is we know he's not the most dynamic, energetic guy. He's not the most captivating guy at the podium, but he was speaking, Jay, with this sense of confidence, right? Let's go back to January, and the Blazers were set to make Liam Cohen the highest paid offensive coordinator. Obviously, they valued what he was able to do last year, 30 points per game, et cetera. And then when he was flirting with the Jacksonville Jaguars again and ultimately became their head coach, the Blazers had an opportunity to pull the old switcheroo. They had an opportunity to chase the points and the hot young offensive coordinator and you know, swap him out for Bowles. And they didn't do that. They valued, at the end of the day, Todd Bowles' leadership ability, his track record in Tampa, the fact that team chemistry and team camaraderie is at an all-time high. And as someone who's in the locker room on a regular basis, I can attest to that. It's higher than it was during the Gruden Super Bowl year. It's higher than it was at any point in the Tony Dungy era. It's higher than it even was, you know, in 2020 during the Super Bowl run. So Bowles has some confidence now, right? That this is his team. He's excited about this season, but he's not coaching scared. I don't think job security is on his mind, and I like that. I want him to coach aggressively and unafraid, and I think that you know, kind of by de facto, he kind of got a vote of confidence. Then you add into the fact he wants ball hawks. He knows he's got to fix the defense. He's got to work on time management and game management. And I heard a lot of the right things. Plus, too, I love the fact that he's got Larry Foote coaching the outside linebackers again, with Mike Caldwell coming in to coach inside linebackers. I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, I love that. I think this is a kind of a common thread with all of coaches when things go wrong. The transparency, right? We don't expect them to show us their entire hand. We don't expect them to give us, you know, the entire recipe of what they're trying to do to rectify it. But, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's kind of the antithesis of what we saw with Byron Leftwich. Listen, you could say that we may not be privy to some of the things that you got going on, but don't sit here and tell us that your rushing attack, that there's no problems with it. You're last in the league. And I think that could be one of those things, Scott, where Todd has learned over time of like, hey, man, I can be a little bit more transparent. I can let everybody know, because I think maybe young coaches are worried that it's a sign of weakness, right? When you say that something's wrong, especially when it's on your side of the ball.
That's right.
But the fact that he said it, the fact that Jason Light said it, I mean, we had, you know, a former Pewter Report guy, John Ledyard, on last week, and he goes, Jay, they got to go all in on this defense. And I think you agree, like, this is a huge offseason for Bowles and Light. Like, let's get some playmakers on this defense, because if you can raise that level between the offense and the defense, and you get that up here, you're not just looking at a division winner. You're looking at a Super Bowl contender. Yeah,
and I want to caution fans a little bit, because, you know, someone's definition of all in and Jason Light's definition of all in could be two different things, right? It doesn't mean they're going to go get Travarius Ward and Dre Greenlaw and Josh Sweat, three of the biggest names in free agency, and fill linebacker, outside linebacker, and cornerback, you know, and make that massive splash. You have to understand something here. Jason Light, and I'm not knocking him, and I think if he was here having this conversation with us, he would agree. Jason Light has hit on three big-time free agents. 3 in 11 years, okay? Tom Brady, that's the obvious one, right? And that's kind of the no-brainer. I mean, even though Brady had some question marks at age 40, you know, that's still the GOAT, and obviously proved out to be a fantastic hit. He took a big chance on Ryan Jensen, made him the highest paid center. Jensen helped lead this team to a Super Bowl, became a Pro Bowl center. That was a huge hit as well. Switching out Gerald McCoy for Ndamukong Suh was also a big deal, right? Suh made $9 million, and that was a controversial move at the time because Gerald was popular. It proved to be the right move because Suh didn't miss any games due to injury, and he brought some toughness to the defense that it lacked up front. So, but that's it. Out of 11 years, 3 free agent hits, and we could spend the rest of this time, Jay, going through the misses, right?
Right.
The Anthony Collins, the Michael Johnson, the Josh McCown,
Deshaun Jackson,
Werner, Deshaun Jackson, Chris Baker, et cetera, Barrett Carter, the linebacker. So why do fans want to ask Jason Licht to do something that he's not that good at? What is he really good at? Drafting players. Mm-hmm. The kind of free agents that Jason Licht likes, Antoine Winfield Jr. last year, Baker Mayfield last year, Chase McLaughlin last year, Levante David. He likes Chris Godwin in free agency this year. He likes guys that have proven themselves in red and pewter, and he wants to reward those players. Mike Evans, prime example, right? So it doesn't mean that he's not going to sign a big-time free agent. What I would prefer to see him do is sign a couple of mid-level guys to one-year prove-it deals. That's work with Shaq Barrett, right? Yeah. That's worked with Baker Mayfield. Try to find the next Shaq Barrett or the next Baker Mayfield, the guy that's hungry that will come in on a one-year prove-it deal with a chance to go to a Super Bowl, right? And and see if he can strike gold. For example, people look at the Eagles and say, "Oh, well, look at they killed it in free agency, right? They got Saquon Barkley, they got C.J. Gardner-Johnson, yeah, but they also got Zach Bond, the All-Pro linebacker. That was a one-year deal worth $3.5 million. Shoot, Jay, they signed Devin White to a one-year deal, $7.5 million. They thought Devin White was going to be the guy that Zach Bond turned out to be, right?
Right.
So Zach Bond was their Shaq Barrett. So before you say, "Oh, well, let's throw Jason Licht under the bus for going cheap again," no, he wants to find that diamond in the rough because those are the guys that are hungry, that still haven't had that payday, that want to earn it, right? And maybe they need a change of scenery. A guy like Joseph Asai from Cincinnati Bengals, right? That's an edge rusher that's been at third wheel behind Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. Have him come in here at age 24, hungry, but with 4 years of experience. I think that's the type of guy that they're looking for. Now, they might sign Khalil Mack, and I'd be all in favor of that, right? We can talk about that. But they're not going to sit there and start stacking up superstars, because the Eagles even tried that last year. Nobody talks about this. Everyone looks at Saquon Barkley and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and some of those free agents and says they were hits. The Eagles had like 3 or 4 hits in free agency out of the 13 guys they signed. So that was about 10 that missed. And one of those misses was a huge miss. Bryce Huff, 10 sacks with the Jets, 2.5 sacks last year. He was a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. How much is Bryce Huff making? $17 million a year. But hey, at the end of the day, people forget about that because they're Super Bowl champs and Saquon hit. But those are the type of free agent mistakes Jason Licht's trying to avoid.
Yeah, I had my buddy on from Cincinnati a couple weeks ago, and he said Joseph Osai is that guy that you guys need to look at. Instead of everybody talking about trading for Trey Hendrickson, Joseph Osai is that candidate. And I put that 2 and 2 together, like that's the Shaq Barrett call right there, the guy right there. How much do you think, I was talking this with our guy Ian Beckles yesterday, how much do you think it would cost to bring Khalil Mack in? Because obviously the sexy name, and I was looking at it yesterday, and it was just like, all right, well, how high would you go for Khalil Mack? Because you're looking at some of these numbers, and if it's going to be over $15 million, I just don't see how that's a possibility.
Well, a couple things with that, right? So with Khalil Mack, I would probably go up to like $18 million a year.
Okay.
But it's going to be a 2-year deal, right? And the way you structure that is hey, every free agent that gets signed, right, the team believes that he's going to be that guy for that year, right? We believe Jordan Whitehead last year was going to be that guy. Oh, he's coming back. Oh, he already knows Todd Bowles' system. Oh, he got better in coverage with the Jets. Okay, well, it didn't work out, right? So you can part ways with him this year, and there's no dead cap money. But he was going to get his $4.5 million last year. Obviously, 2 different stratospheres in terms of salary. We're talking Khalil Mack, right? But what you can do is you can sit there and let's just say for simple math, let's just call it $20 million, just because I'm not good at math. let's say you sign him for a 2-year, $40 million deal, right? $20 million this year. And so maybe you front load that to where it's 30, you pay him 30 million this year, right? The way it's structured, with the signing bonus, et cetera, to where if this year it pans out, great. But let's say his play slips, or let's say he doesn't work out. The next year, the cap hit's only $10 million, right? And you tried the 1 year, didn't work. It's not the avalanche because it's not backloaded next year. So you can kind of walk away from it. Okay, $10 million. All right, we'll eat it. That's not the end of the world. The thing with Mack that I do like is a couple things. He's been that guy everywhere he's gone, from the Raiders to the Bears to the Chargers. He's been high energy, high effort, big time producer. He's getting a little long in the tooth, right? 34. He had 17 sacks 2 years ago. It dropped to 6 this year. From an experience standpoint, this is a future Hall of Famer we're talking about. From an experience standpoint, from a veteran presence standpoint, just having him in the room with Yaya Diaby, with Chris Braswell. Let's say you draft Donovan Ezeraku in the first round. With Ezeraku, 1 or 2 years worth of being around that guy in his orbit is going to help your outside linebacker room tremendously.
Like a JPP? You think it'd be like
Absolutely.
a JPP impact like that?
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm. And he's chasing a ring. He wants a ring. So the money he made in California with the high state income tax in that state in California, let's just say, and I'm not good at math, but let's just say that $20 million offer from the Chargers, right, is really an $18 million offer in Tampa when you take out the sales tax, or thereabouts, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, that's even money, right, in terms of what Khalil would be taking home, because there's no state income tax in the state of Florida. So that's a way you can get Khalil Mack for maybe a little bit under market value. Then you sit there and say, hey, Khalil, we're Super Bowl ready. We need you. We have an offense that puts up 30 points per game. You saw firsthand, even with Justin Herbert, you guys couldn't score. We beat your ass in that game head-to-head, and you guys couldn't score any points in the playoffs. We have an offense here that is, it's Super Bowl ready. We need you to make our defense Super Bowl ready. So the lure of a Super Bowl ring might help lure a player like Khalil Mack to take maybe $1 million less, rather than staying with the Chargers or going to another team, maybe like Chicago, that is not Super Bowl ready, that can dangle more money.
You're talking me into it, buddy. You're talking me into the Khalil Mack thing. I was a little hesitant, but I like the way that you put it out there. I want to ask you about one of the standouts, Nicky Manwari from the Combine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at this guy, just insane. I mean, I think he was the biggest star coming out of the Combine because he looks like an absolute athletic freak. He could do a little bit of everything. Safety spot, South Carolina, a captain there. If he's there at 19, the Bucs take him? To pair him up with Antoine Winfield Jr. I know it's not an edge rusher. I know it's not an interior linebacker or corner. You could say safety might be 4th or 5th when it comes to most important positions on the defense. But I look at that guy and I go, holy smokes. You have him and Antoine Winfield Jr. Like, they can cover up a lot of the issues that they have defensively. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't interview him, right? They didn't even interview him informally. So that tells me a couple things. Number one, maybe the Buccaneers think, well, he's a first-round guy, and we're just not going to take a safety in the first round. We just don't believe that there's value there. They did interview Malachi Starks from Georgia. He's a fringe first, maybe second-round guy, so maybe they're thinking he gets second-round consideration. But when you look at the positional value, I think Tampa Bay is either going to go outside linebacker, edge rusher, or they're going to go cornerback. Those are really where you're going to get your most bang for your buck and address those needs with a first-round pick. I like Manwari. If you look at Todd Bowles' history with safeties, he's only had one really big safety. That was Keanu Neal, and he really didn't fit in Tampa. Right. Didn't really do much. Now, this is an upgrade over Keanu Neal, right? This is an absolute he might be an upgrade over Derwin James, okay? Right. But when you look at the safeties Todd Bowles has deployed, you look at Tyke Smith, who's, I think, going to slide over to replace Jordan Whitehead now. 5'10", 205 pounds. Whitehead, 5'10", about a $195. Winfield, 5'10", about 200 pounds. He likes safeties that are more agile and fluid, and that typically comes from guys that are a little bit closer to under 6 foot just because of their hips. When you get those long-legged defensive backs, especially against quicker, short slot receivers, that's where you get into some coverage problems, right? Is the ability to turn and run. That's where you get separation created. I've had conversations with Bowles about this. So it's like, you and I may disagree with Todd about that, and I'm with you. I like Nick and Amawari, but he didn't interview with Tampa Bay. So unless the Bucs are going stealth mode this year, like they did with Kalijah Cansey from a couple years back, where they didn't interview him, they didn't bring him in for a top 30 visit, but they drafted him in the first round. Unless they're going stealth mode, I don't think that he's on their radar. Last year, when you look at the combine formal interviews, this is part of the reason why we go to the combine in Indy every year. Chris Braswell had a formal interview. So did Graham Barton. So did Tyke Smith. So did Jalen McMillan. So did Devin Culp. And so did Michael Pratt. Right? Those were pretty much everybody but Bucky Irving and Elijah Klein had formal interviews with the Bucs last year. So maybe they change it up this year. Maybe they go back to stealth mode. But if they don't, if they're sticking with guys they really are zeroing in on with formal interviews, then he's outside of that perimeter.
I like what you said there, because it seems like the Buccaneers or Todd Bowles likes the corners that are bigger guys, right?
Yeah.
Like the Jamel Deans of the world, tackle in space, maybe not as much ball hawks, right? But does he have to change that process a little bit? Because you've had these guys and you kind of fit the mold, the Carlton, the Jamel Dean, but you got to get guys that are going to get their hands on the football a little bit more. So does he change that a little bit? Does he try to go, right, I've been saying my corners need to be bigger guys. Does he sacrifice maybe a little bit of the size for a guy that has a little bit more of a nose for the football? Because something's got to change. You can't just think magically, all right, guys are just going to start picking the ball off if that's not their thing. That's not their bag. Jamel Dean is never going to be a Trayvon Diggs, right? He's never going to have 8 interceptions in a season.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
How do you think – is that part of the next maturation or next step in the maturation process for a guy like Todd Bowles of like, hey, I got to be a little bit more open-minded on bringing corners that are going to take the football away?
I think it could be, and I think it should be. One of the players that they had a formal interview with that I absolutely loved, and trust me, as a Kansas State Wildcat, I've seen enough of this guy get him the hell out of the Big 12. I'm talking about Kansas's Kobe Bryant, the Jayhawk. I mean, I would love to see him in red and pewter rather than red and blue, because he played really well against K-State and everybody in the Big 12. 13 career interceptions, including 8 over the past 2 seasons, 4 last year and 4 the year before, which shows me he's a consistent playmaker. If you're productive in college, it's a good precursor. It's usually a good indicator that you have a chance to be very productive at the next level. Doesn't always work that way, but if you're not productive in college in a given area, sacks, interceptions, whatever, then it's harder to make that jump and all of a sudden be proficient at getting to the quarterback or getting interceptions at the next level. It doesn't typically work that way, right? Like Georgia's Terrell Davis comes to mind. Never had 1,000 yards as a running back way back in the day for the Bulldogs. Gets to the NFL as a late round pick with the Broncos, maybe undrafted free agent. I forget where he was picked. And then became a 2,000-yard rusher, right? And helped the Broncos go to the Super Bowl. That is the exception, not the rule.
It's like Brady gets a 6th-round pick, right? It's like you remember them because they're the exceptions, not because it happens all the time.
You could sit there and draft a quarterback every year for a decade in the 6th round, and you're not going to get Tom Brady, right? That's not the formula. But when you look at Kobe Bryant, 13 career interceptions, he's a ball hawk. He's a little bit undersized. He's 6 foot, 180 pounds, but he's tough as nails. This he plays like he's 6'2", 205, right? And that's what you're looking for, too, is a guy that is tough. He's got some dog in him. I love him, and I think he would be an exception. Now, he's not your 1st or 2nd round pick, probably maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick, but he's worth taking a chance on. I remember there was a guy drafted in the 3rd round back in 1997, 5'10", 180-pound corner out of Virginia. What was his name? Rondé Barber.
Who'll be joining us on the program Tuesday next.
There you
Tuesday
go. Let's plug it.
Great plug. There you go.
Yeah, 47 career interceptions. And why did he have so many picks? Because he showed he could do it for the Cavaliers. 15 interceptions over 3 seasons, right? That's an average of 5 per year. That's tremendous production. So again, it's not always an indicator. Like past results don't always indicate future performance. To sound like a financial guy here. But that's how you have to look at it, right? If they don't get sacks in college, what makes you think they're going to become a double-digit sack guy at the next level, going up against Pro Bowl caliber tackles? It just doesn't happen. But getting a guy like Kobe Bryant, who is not 6'1" or 6'2", he's 6 foot, not 200 pounds, but 180, but plays bigger. Yeah, I think that might be, the direction to go in. And there's a big, tall, long, drink of water too. East Carolina's Savon Ravel that fits that long, lanky, fast criteria. That is a bit of a ball hawk too. He's got some interceptions over the last couple of years, injury shortened senior season, but he's certainly a candidate for the Bucs in round 2. And I'd flood the cornerback position. Draft a couple corners.
I like that too, because you saw when the guys went down, I mean, you're scraping the bottom. It's no disrespect to some of the guys that they've had out there, but you can't have guys that are special teamers out there as your backup corner and think you're going to be able to compete there in the NFC. All right, before I get you out of here, I want to ask you about the defensive tackle position. We had Josh Capo on last week, and a lot of people got bent out of shape because of his comment about Vita Vea, which I thought was standard. And I think the people that actually watched the video actually understood.
Agreed.
And I had I had a former Buccaneer actually text me and go, he is so spot on with that, and people just didn't watch the video. And to kind of gauge on what Jason Light, you're not going to invest in a guy that's over 300 pounds as he's getting into his 30s. Right. You'll get into a point where it's kind of like a Rondé and kind of like a Levante, where it's like a year deal here,
that's
a 2
exactly
year deal
right.
here, but it's not going to be a long-term thing. In no form or fashion did he say that the Bucs were going to move on from Vita Vea right now. It was just kind of forecasting what the next couple of years looks like.
Absolutely.
But with that being said, and I know there's something up on pewterreport.com about this now, don't take defensive tackle off of the board either.
That's right.
Because if there's a guy there, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of good ones in this draft, I mean, the Buccaneers should definitely keep an eye on some of these guys clogging up the middle.
You're exactly right, Jay. So 2 schools of thought on that. So this is a very deep defensive tackle draft. And that kind of means 2 things. It means that the defensive tackle that you might get at 19, because the position's so loaded, you might be getting a player that is like a top 10, top 15 worthy pick. It's just that there might be 3 or 4 other guys taken that high. So you're getting a good value at 19. Then the other school of thought is, well, if you wait till later in the draft, like day 3, you might be getting a day 2 caliber defensive tackle. In other words, if you pick one in the 5th round, you might be getting a guy you had a 3rd round grade on, just because there's so many defensive tackles and only so many teams need him, right? So the surplus might work in your favor. Couple of things. I have it on incredible authority that if the Buccaneers, if Graham Barton was not on the board at 26 last year when they traded down with Dallas, and they obviously picked him, but let's say he wasn't there, the pick was going to be Illinois defensive tackle Johnny Newton from St. Petersburg. They were going to pick a defensive tackle in the 1st round. If you hadn't been paying attention, Vita Vea, a 1st round pick. Logan Hall, even though he wasn't a 1st round pick, he was the 1st pick of the Bucs, the top of the 2nd round in 2022. He didn't really show a whole bunch as a rookie. So what did Jason Light do? He picked another defensive tackle in the, say it with me, 1st round in 2023 with Khalil Mack. He values trench play. Football games are won in the trenches. If you don't believe me, ask Patrick Mahomes. He's lost 2 Super Bowls because the other team had a tremendous defensive line, and his offensive line sucked, right? Mm-hmm. It's that simple. So, yes, there is a need for that. And remember, this is before Logan Hall had kind of his breakout year with 5.5 sacks last year. So they were unsure about Logan Hall entering, year 2. But now that, or I should say entering year 3, but he did have the breakout year. But now Logan Hall is entering a contract year. Jay, if he gets 5.5 sacks again, some team's going to pay him a bundle of money. And the Buccaneers, they're going to continue to invest in Vita Vea and Khalil Mack. They're the starters. So you want another defensive tackle in the hopper. You want another guy that you can develop. It's not a position where you typically just throw a guy in there and he is an instant star. Let's see, Gerald McCoy, Warren Sapp, all of those guys had 3 sacks or less during their rookie seasons, and yet they became Pro Bowl defensive tackles. So when you look at the position, it takes a year or 2. Just ask Logan Hall. It takes a year or 2 to become that guy. So if you draft a guy now while Vita Vea is 30, while Logan Hall has one more year left. Get him in the hopper, have him learn and develop from those guys. So when, let's say, Vita Vea moves on maybe in a couple years or retires, or Logan Hall moves on after this year, then you already have a guy that you have in your system, in your scheme, has learned from those veterans, and now just gets moved up the depth chart. It's a smart way to do it, rather than having to draft for need when you need to. Draft a year or two ahead of the position and get ahead of your needs.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I remember talking to my buddy up there in the nation's capital, and he didn't get a ton of time this year, but they love Johnny Newton because he was learning from Deron Payne and learning from Jonathan Allen, and learning from a lot of these guys under Dan Quinn. And there is a high hope and expectation that he's going to take a tremendous step forward for the 2025
and he will.
season.
He's a great player. And again, that's a position that it's so hard to come in and play against grown men with grown men strength in the offensive line, like 30-year-old centers and 30-year-old guards and stuff, guys that have grown man strength. I mean, you can talk to any of you can talk to Sapp, you can talk to Culpepper, all that stuff. It's a hard position to come in, and you can sit there and do all the bench press, drills you want and stuff. It's just different when you go against, NFL veteran offensive linemen that just have that grown man strength. It's different than when you're a young kid coming in at 20, 21, 22 and playing defensive tackle for the first time.
You got that right. Scott Reynolds, Pewter Report. Guys, now's the time. PewterReport.com. Bookmark it. Get it in their favorites. It's on the top of my screen every single day to make sure that I'm keeping abreast of everything that Scott and the whole crew over there. And Adam's got a great story on Donovan Ezeraku right now being an explosive guy that could be an option for the Bucs at 19. Scott, you're the best. I appreciate it. Glad you made it back safe and sound in the Tampa Bay area. We'll talk to you again soon, man. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
You too, Jay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, pal.